This spring break, choose your own Disney adventure with our very own Travel Bug Girls Disney expert. Cassie specializes in crafting custom vacations full of joy, ease, and just the right amount of Mickey-shaped snacks. She takes the stress out of planning, adds a dash of enchantment, and turns every trip into a storybook adventure. Visit travelbuggirls.com or click the link in our show notes to find out how Travel Bug Girls can make your Disney dreams come true. Welcome to the Travel Bug Girls podcast, the show where we dive into the world of travel, exploring everything from expert tips and insider secrets to unforgettable destinations and the latest trends. Whether you're a seasoned globetrotter or planning your very first adventure, we've got you covered with the advice and inspiration you need to make your travels truly unforgettable. So sit back, relax, and let's take your travel planning to the next level. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Travel Bug Girls podcast. I'm Kimmy, and I'm here with Heather and Tina. And today we're going to continue our international travel series and talk about transportation, which may seem like an obvious thing when you're traveling, but there's actually a lot of different ways to get around in different countries. Let's just start with the most obvious one. When you're traveling internationally, you're probably going to be getting on a plane. So let's start there. What do we need to know when we're booking our flights?
Have your passports, have them updated. Most places need them to be active for 6 months after you arrive. So just make sure that that's all in order.
So booking directly. Book directly if you can. Sometimes it's extremely tempting to bundle, your flights with your hotel or your tour or your cruise. And that's a decision you'll have to make if the pricing is really exceptional. But remember that if anything goes wrong, you have to deal with whatever company you booked all that through. And sometimes they have limited ways they can help you with your flights if anything goes wrong with your flights. So that's why typically I recommend booking directly with the airline. So you might find the price somewhere else, but then go directly to the airline and book that flight. And that is going to help you ensure you have better customer service in this day and age where flights are a major issue.
Have your flights booked. Make sure you share that with your travel agent who has all the other pieces in place, because as we'll talk about in the moment, we'll need to know when your transfers are going to pick you up or all that kind of thing. So we'll want to watch the flights for you.
That's a great point. So you brought up transfers. Let's go to that, because that is something also that can be like a major headache if you are not prepared ahead of time. So like you've made your plane travel and now you're in your destination, and like, what now? Because you're standing there with all this luggage. You're at an airport. Yeah. Your hotel's not across the street. It might be an hour away. Like if you're in France, in Paris, like we've talked about, the airport is not central. How do you get from the airport to your hotel or Airbnb or wherever you're staying? Let's talk about transfers. How does that work? What is it? How do you find a reputable one?
I think a lot of people don't realize you can book your own transfers. As travel agents, that's one of the major services I'm able to share with clients, is giving them multiple options for transfer. So gone are the days where you have to step outside and call a taxi, right? We all know that Uber is very popular in big cities. That includes some big cities across the globe. So even in Europe, you can pull up your Uber app and have an Uber waiting for you outside the airport. However, there are many other options too. And one of my favorite that I've been using lately in European travel is Daytrip. Daytrip allows you to not only have someone come pick you up at the airport or a train station, but you can also ask them to stop along the way at sites. So for example, let's just imagine you're arriving in Paris. You need to get into Paris proper. Charles de Gaulle, like you said, is like outside of the city. So it can be a 40-minute transfer into the major city center for your hotel, why not along the way stop and see the Eiffel Tower? Right? Just get it out of the way. Have them pull up right up into La Trocadero and get out and take photos with the Eiffel Tower behind you before you even go to your hotel. You could do that. So the nice thing about that is they have your luggage. You're not hauling that across town. They are going straight to the spot you're asking them to, and then they're going to take you straight to your hotel. It's a great way to organize it. You can add multiple stops. You can say how long you want to stay there. You could even have them take you to a restaurant, have lunch, and then they're going to take you from there on. And you can organize the whole thing before you even leave the country. So it's a really neat service.
What's that called again?
Day Trip.
Day Trip. Is that an app or a website?
Yes.
Or
You can find it online, as a website, but also you can download the app, which is the most effective way to book travel. Day Trip.
That's really cool. So what are some other transfer options that y'all know about? I know there's different services like through that your travel agent can book, like a private car service and stuff like that. So how do you know like what's a reputable car service to book? And I know like different countries might, so I know that different car services, some of them might stop at 4 different hotels on the way to your hotel or things like that. So your 30-minute trip might turn into an hour and a half. So how do you kind of find out like that this is what I'm getting when I order a car service, private, semi-private? Like, can you kind of untangle some of that?
I think you touched on it when you said private or semi-private. It's in the description. So if you have your working with your travel agent, say, I want to go straight to my hotel, or I want to make these stops. If you're doing something like Day Trip or you have a personal car, you are okay with, picking up a couple other people, being in a group.
Yeah, I think too, you can read reviews. Most of those services have established, if they don't, maybe don't take a risk on those, but there are a lot of companies that have been doing this for a long time in their destination. They do this every day, all day long, and they have it down to a science, and they know the best routes and everything. So you definitely look at reviews. If a travel agent's listening to this, like, look at the reviews, friends. Like, make sure you're reading and know what your clients are getting into, because this is their first step into that destination, and you don't want that to be a bad welcome if it's in our control at all, right? So as a traveler, the thing is especially the further away we've gone, we can be really exhausted and not our best selves in those moments. You've just gone through the hassle of getting off a plane, going through customs, getting your baggage, trying to figure out the signs and like, where am I supposed to be to even get to whatever it is we're getting on to get out of the airport. So trying to figure out, what shuttle am I getting on? What car am I looking for? Is there going to be a guy with a sign? Like, these can be really difficult moments. And so making sure you know what to expect is really important. Ask questions. Once you have it booked, they're going to give you a phone number or an email to contact that person. Go ahead and do it and say, what am I looking for when I arrive? Also, they're going to want to know all of your arrival information. If we're booking direct, not just like a free hotel shuttle or something, if you're booking someone to pick you up, they need to know your flight details. So don't be put off by that when they ask you, like, I need the exact flight details and all the names exactly of the people I'm picking up. They want to make sure they're doing their job correctly. And that's why they're asking for that information. So don't be put off by it. It's an important element, because if your flight gets delayed, you're in air and you don't even know what's happening, and you have no way of contacting what's going on the ground. They need to be able to track your flight and make sure they're in the right place to pick you up at the right time.
I think too, this is one really important piece of the puzzle where it's really good to have a travel agent, because transfers can be tricky if like the hotel doesn't have their own or whatever. For all those reasons you said, like, you're tired, you're just getting into this new country, you're gone through like this hassle. You really want this part to go smooth. And so I think having a travel agent to kind of navigate this part is really helpful. And because there's a lot of like groups and resources that we have as travel agents where we can go into a group, like a Facebook group, maybe that specifies in one certain area, like Cancun or whatever, and ask for recommendations. Hey, what have you guys used? Have you found that's really good? Or like, what have you found that's you thought was going to be good, but it wasn't? So kind of that like insider information where we can get like personal reviews on these kind of services and find out what works and then pass that along to our clients, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, I like that idea because we also have partners who have partners. I have a good experience that I had with a client. I booked a transfer through Project Expedition, and I also knew of, I believe it was, somebody popular, Amstar or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I was able to, when I got the call that their flight from, say, Oklahoma City to Dallas was now going out of like North Carolina or something, it was like totally different than what the information. And the client called in a panic saying, I don't have time to get through because we're getting right off and we have to go through this great big airport that we don't know. And can you call? And it was, of course. So I was able to call and they were able to reschedule for a later time, a different transfer. So they were still able to get right onto a transfer when they landed, even though it was going to be hours after their original transfer was scheduled.
Let's talk about another. This one is really popular, especially in Europe. So once you're in your destination, let's talk about the train, because I know that can be intimidating, and especially if you're not used to that kind of travel. What are your recommendations as far as like even booking your train? Like, do you do that before you get there, when you get there? Tell us kind of about that.
Let's first talk about Europe, and then we can talk about how that might look different in the US. Okay. So in Europe, the advantage of booking in advance is that you might get a cheaper ticket. You might get a cheaper ticket. Usually, if it's a couple weeks out, you're going to get a cheaper ticket. You cannot book months in advance. Like you could only book a year in advance for a flight. You can only book a couple months in advance for trains. So you can't book super in advance. So as soon as we're putting your whole trip together 9 months before you travel, I'm not going to be able to book your train. We're going to have to wait and do that right before you go. But if you do book a couple weeks in advance, you might get a cheaper ticket. Even then, I'm usually going to recommend a flex ticket, especially for that first train ride. If you're arriving into the airport and you are taking a train out of there to go to your first hotel or whatever, then you're going to want a flex ticket, because what if your flight gets delayed in the US before you even go? Now you're already late for that train maybe. So you're going to want a flex ticket that allows you to exchange it for a later time without a penalty. So you might not always splurge for a flex ticket if you're riding a lot of trains in your trip, but because it's a little bit more, but it's worth it for that first and last train, probably, because you don't want to miss that train and then have to buy a whole new ticket. That's going to definitely cost you more than what that little surcharge is to have a flex ticket. So that would be my first advice. Booking in advance gives you a greater discount, but it also might give you assigned seating if you're booking first class. So if you're coming in at a time where there's going to be a lot of people catching the train at the same time, which if you're taking a train out of an airport, that is very likely because a lot of flights come in kind of around the same times. So, all the flights coming into Paris, for example, from the US are all coming in within like a 3-hour window. So those trains are really full of travelers trying to leave the airport and going into the city or onto their next destination further down the line. And the thing is you're going to want an assigned seat probably because you're going to have all your luggage and you need to have space, you need to have room. So also spring for the first class probably. And first class for a train does not necessarily mean, it's not champagne and caviar. It means an assigned seat and room for your luggage is what it means. There are exceptional trains where that means something different, but the average train you're riding for transportation first class just means you have an assigned seat and extra space for your luggage. So keep those kinds of things in mind. And good news is there are trains that go out of a lot of major cities airport. So that is a really helpful thing to know, that it can connect you directly. You don't necessarily have to have an outside transfer service if you can walk through the airport down to the train station that's in the terminal. That's a really great way to go directly. Also remember, one personal tip from real experience is if it's a long train ride, let's say you're flying into Charles de Gaulle and you're actually staying on, down in the southern part of France or out, anywhere outside of Paris, essentially. That train ride, once all the stress is over of you getting out of the airport, getting into the train, getting settled, finding your spot, getting all your luggage put away, and you sit down and now you have an hour or more train ride, it's gonna be everything in you not to fall asleep. You will be so tired after an entire day of traveling, because by the time you arrive, even if it's early morning in France, you've been traveling for a whole day already to get to that point. So your body is going to want to be like, "Ooh, we're here." And you will very likely fall asleep. So set an alarm for, 10 minutes before your arrival time is set so that you'll wake up. Because it happens to people, and then they wake up 30 minutes down the road from where they meant to get off, and now they got to figure out how to get back on the first day of their trip. So make sure you set an alarm to wake yourself up.
That's a story right there. How about, do most train lines in the city like have an app or like a website or like something that helps you kind of navigate what trains you know, if you need to like switch trains or whatever?
So the best news for Americans is that Google Maps is going to give you a lot of detail about trains. So all you have to do is when you start your journey. So let's say now I'm standing in the airport, and this is true in America. It's so great. So far it's worked for me everywhere I've been, but I haven't been to some really remote. In the major cities, you're going to be able to pull up, okay, I'm standing here in the middle of the airport and I want to get to my hotel. Can you give me some options? You hit that transportation option at the top. The first one's car, then it's walking. The next one is going to be trains or metro. So if you hit that option, it's going to give you details about the different trains that are coming in near the time and place that you are. It'll tell you need to take a 3-minute walk this direction down these stairs, and then that's where the entrance to the train station is. Then it's going to tell you which line you need to be at, and it's going to tell you when it's going to arrive, and when it gets to the next, it'll tell you if there's stops and how far down the line they are. So if it's like, take this train and then go 3 stops and get off on the 4th one, it's going to give you those kinds of details. And then it'll tell you how far it is to walk from where you exit to the next location you're going to. So if you have to change train stations, or if you need to go from a train to a bus, or if you're coming out of a train station and walking to your hotel, it's going to tell you exactly how far and what direction to go. It's amazing. It's really amazing. So that is something that I really, really recommend you have practice using before you go, is Google Maps. And it will also recommend which train lines are, the easiest or fastest. So there might be 4 options to get you from here to there, but one of them is a direct train and the other one makes you change trains 3 times. Obviously, if I have to wait 10 more minutes to get the direct train, that's probably what I want, because I don't want, as a tourist in a new place, to have too many steps. That's where you might get lost, especially if you're tired and frazzled. So choosing a direct option, even if you have to wait a little or pay like €10 more, is probably going to be worth it.
You said you wanted to talk about trains in the US too, because they're a little bit different. So let's touch on that real quick before we move on.
Especially on the East Coast, but there are definitely other locations where this could be true. The option to take a train out of the airport or from nearby the airport is also often a good option for you as a transfer. I'm thinking we've done that in Washington, D.C. And we've done that in Boston. If you're trying to get up to a town outside of Boston, it is probably going to be cheaper unless you're renting a car for reasons. If you're just trying to go from, I need to get from here to the hotel in that place, and it's far enough outside of town that I don't know how I'm going to manage that because the Uber or taxi is going to be very expensive. The train might be the best option because that's probably what the locals are doing in that situation. So making sure you're comparing the price to take the train and like how that would work. If it's going to cost you $50 to get to the train station to then take the train, like that may not be worth it to you. But if it's like, oh, there's an entrance to the train station right here on the other side of the exit at the airport, then that's really helpful. So a lot of commuters are commuting in the Northeast in particular by train to and from the airport. So that's a good option for you as well. Sometimes you can pick up a rental car there, but sometimes it's cheaper to pick up a rental car at the, further down the line. And so you could even take a train from the airport to the city center, pick up your rental car, and then go from there. So there's a lot of good options to consider. And especially in those areas where parking is such an issue, you may not want a rental car. If you're having a city vacation and you're planning to take metro and walk and that kind of thing, then you probably don't want a rental car because you also have to figure out parking the whole time, and it's expensive and problematic and limited. So in those Northeast cities, you might consider taking the same transportation locals do and see what those options are. And in that case, definitely download apps for local metro and commuter trains. They will definitely have apps that you can use. In Dallas, down here, we use the DART system. It goes directly to the airport. It goes out to the outer lying cities. Like if you want to go to Frisco and do some fun things out there, Grapevine, there are options for that. And then that's saving you having to have a car all the time.
Yeah, sometimes a car can be way more trouble than it's worth, especially in big cities like that, if you don't know your way around. The last option I have for getting around is walking on your own 2 feet. And I think that when you're walking, I know Kara has talked about this on her travels in the past, is use Google Maps also and map out where you're going. Look at where you're going. Make sure you know where you're going before you set off. That can be very helpful. And also pay attention to your surroundings. Make sure you're not walking off down an alley by yourself where nobody else is. Like if you're walking, you need to stay where there are other people.
Have good shoes. If you're going to be walking on those cobblestones, something that can handle walking on wet if it's going to be in the spring or the fall or winter even, knowing the type of footwear that you need to, and maybe not wear the brand new shoes, have them broken in a little bit so you don't get the get your blisters and everything. I love walking when I'm in different places. But I know places like New York City, you've got to keep up because it's just like a stream of people walking. New Orleans, a lot of walking, but have closed-toed shoes because what they call there the street gravy, things like that, in like the Bourbon Street area. And also, this was probably already been mentioned with being aware of your surroundings, but we do use our phones a lot. Have your phone somehow attached to you. That is a very popular thing that people will grab and steal from you. And that's a big hassle, even if you have insurance, which of course you want to have it to where, it's not easy to take from your hand. We're using it for directions. You have your walking directions on Google, but have to find a way to do it where it's not so easy to take from you.
That's a good point.
This is something that we've talked about on a previous episode, but making sure that you do have access to the internet if you are relying on something like Google Maps. Like I just recommended using Google Maps, but if your phone isn't set up to work properly out in the street in the middle of another country, then you're going to be really, really upset when you arrive and realize, oh, my entire plan for surviving this is not going to work right now. So make sure you have a way to charge your phone in a foreign country. Make sure you have your eSIM or your new SIM card set up. Make sure if you're using an international plan, and make sure you have that figured out and you know how to do it. And even then, you're probably going to want to, when you arrive, turn your phone off and turn it back on again, because it has to register the new SIM card, or it has to register the new network. And so if it's not working and you were told it should, then try turn it off and turn it back on again in the new country, and often that resets it. So all of these options too, you should be able to use your credit card. So make sure you have payment ready and figured out. It is one of the reasons why Americans, I think, are using Uber even in foreign countries, is because they don't have to figure out, how am I going to pay for this? It's already set up for you. And that is the other benefit of hiring a private transfer as well, or pre-buying tickets of any kind, is because you already have that done. You already have it figured out. It's not something you have to be standing there on the street trying to figure out money like in the olden days, 1985. You don't have to worry about that anymore, because it's done for you. It's already done, and you were able to pay with your preferred method before you ever left. So it is a benefit of pre-planning some of these options. And sometimes even if talking about walking, like a Metro card in a big city, sometimes you can pre-order those too. But often there is a vending machine, essentially a machine, as soon as you enter that system, where you can hit the little American or British flag so that you can read it in English, and then you can go through the steps and order exactly what you're looking for. Do I need a day pass? Do I need one way? Do I need to be able to go all the way across the city all day long for 3 days? Usually there are passes that will get you exactly what you need, and then you put your credit card into it and it charges it, and you never had to have any currency exchange or anything like that, and you have exactly what you need to get around town. So by the way, if you are doing Metro in a foreign country, do it that way, or go to the ticket counter. Do not purchase tickets from a person standing nearby, no matter how they're dressed, no matter what they say, no matter what deal they give you. Oh, it's half the price if you buy it from me instead of that machine over there. That is a scam. They're almost always tickets that don't work, and you can get fined by the police. And I have had clients that did, because they wanted to save some money. It was a tempting offer. The guy seemed really sincere, and then the police come around the corner and they are fined in cash. You thought the scammer was scammy? The police standing there asking you to hand over €100, that's going to feel bad. But then if you argue, the option is for them to take you to jail in a foreign country. So what would you rather do? Just go to the ticket desk if you don't know what to do, or use the machine and let it be a day? It doesn't matter what it costs. You got to get out of there, right? So also, I think for all of these things is try to keep some perspective.
Use the things that are set up for parking and for transportation.
Yeah. One thing too I was going to say about going back to walking is some cities are walkable and some cities are not. And so I think that's an important thing to know before you go. Is this even a walkable city?
Please do your research. Please read some blogs or some pages or something, because there are places. If you are a person who's always been we show up and then we just walk everywhere, and that's your method that's awesome. Yay. I am so glad for you. That is a great way to see a city. However, some are sprawling. DFW is a great example, right? In America, all of our Midwestern cities are massively sprawled. And so to get from here to there might seem like a small thing, and it's not. It's like there's an interstate in between you.
Yeah. And there might not be a way to walk. Literally, not even a way.
Make sure and then an easy way to do that is to pull up Google Maps or your Apple Maps and hit the walking option and see, does it make you go 5 miles around because you can't go there? You know what I mean? Yeah. But another thing is in some cities, and we all know this, right? We all know this. Movies alone would tell you this is true. that there are areas in every major city that are gorgeous and well designed for tourists to be walking all over the place. And there's lots of features that are kind of tourist centric, right? They know that they're relying on tourism in certain areas. Then there might be another area not very far away, but between here and there is a neighborhood that all the locals know. You don't just walk through there. Unless you belong there, you don't just walk through there. Like, you better know what you're doing. But the tourist doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. And all they might see is, look how easy it is to just take this little alley and it connects the two. Yeah. But how would you know that? Because Google Maps is not going to warn you, hey, warning,
this is not a safe
3
area.
attacks on this alley last week, right? Like, there's no way to know that necessarily easily. So in those kinds of situations, a little research goes a long way. Working with a tourist or travel agent that has more experience is going to be helpful. But also, finding some other options. If you get to the corner and you're like, I don't know about that, spring for Uber, call Uber.
Yeah.
They'll pick you up right there on that corner where you're standing and take you safely to the next spot. Holler down a taxi, walk back to the corner and wave down a taxi. Make sure that you're using reputable ways of getting around if you're unsure. Do not just go charging down and save $10 and cost you everything else. Right? It's not worth it. And I think that's something that's hard to keep in perspective when we're really trying to pinch our pennies. But like, your safety is worth a lot. So please be careful.
Get to know your area that you're visiting. Talk to your concierge at the hotel.
One other thing I had on my list that I skipped over was the bus. And I don't think you're probably not going to necessarily take the bus for like travel, but I think the bus is really helpful for touring, hitting all the tourist spots in a popular tourist city. So where there's like maybe a hop on, hop off bus, we can hop on. It's going to take you like to 20 different locations that are super popular that you want to see. You just get on, get back off, that can be really convenient. Whereas instead of like having a car where you're trying to like navigate this place you're not familiar with, I think that kind of bus can be a really good option as far as a good overview of the sites that you want to see.
Yeah, there's really two main options for that kind of thing. One is the hop on, hop off bus, which exists, by the way, in most major cities, even here in America.
And they have an app.
Great way. And they have there's two main big companies. One's called the Big Bus. And I think the other one's just called Hop on, Hop off Bus. But anyway, there's two big companies that are very well known, very well established. They have it down to an art. And I have used them personally for our family in many different locations, but I also recommend them to clients all the time because we have had such good success. The nice thing about a hop on, hop off bus, like this kind of branded tourist bus, is that number one, it's going to have an app. It's designed for you to use it as a tour guide and transportation in one price point, in one package. And they make it very easy by having the bus access at multiple places in town near the most, like the key sites. So if you're traveling around London, Edinburgh, Paris, any of these big cities like this, you can get on the bus at one site, travel around to the next one, or all the way around the whole route, and it's giving you like an audio tour of the city with like neat little facts. It's a great way to take a rest if you have been walking all day. And it's also, it's a great way to see the city. So what I recommend is do that first. When you first arrive in a new city, do it for the first day at least. Let it take right at the first time when you first get there. Like this is after you've checked into your hotel, hopefully. Check into your hotel, get on the bus, ride it around, see the route, see all the main stops. then decide where do we want to get off. And you've got a map, you've got an app. It'll tell you like the bus will be here in 3 minutes, right? So if you're like sitting at a cafe near the bus stop, you can decide like, do we want to catch this one or do we want to wait the next 8 minutes to catch the next one? You know, it's so convenient and it's going to take you directly to those locations. And then you're not having to worry about all that stuff about like, do I go down this alley? Should I turn here? It's taking you exactly to the main stops. It's a good way to get the lay of the land on your first day in a new big city. And then you automatically have seen all the major sites right away. And then if you want to go deeper, you can also usually buy 2-day tickets, sometimes with extra perks like, hey, we'll also give you a Seine River cruise if you take the hop on hop off bus in Paris, right? So you can sometimes get some extra things included that are really helpful. And in some cities, even though on the map it's walkable, it could be all uphill. Like Edinburgh is like that. Like the main part of Edinburgh is up on top of a hill. And then the modern city is at the bottom. So if you're going between the two for museums and historical things, you're literally climbing a small mountain every time you change between the modern city and the older city. So to have that bus haul you up the hillside and drop you off at the exact location you want to be at is amazing. It is so much more helpful. And you can still walk for 2 hours in between and then get on the bus at the end when you're tired and go to the next place. So I think that's a great way to start. But also remember that all these big cities have metro systems, and often there's a metro pass that will include subway and buses in the same pass. So if you're going to be there a couple days, it might be worth it to buy a pass and use their app or use Google Maps like we talked about to get around town. And that's nice when you're also going to be going some out of the way places that aren't the major sites. Like if your hotel's off the beaten path, if you want to go to this restaurant over here, you know, then having that Metro card is going to save you a lot of money getting around town like a local.
I think that's all that we have time for today. So thank y'all for being on, and hopefully that kind of gave everybody a good overview of transportation options when you're traveling internationally, and some do's and don'ts and tips and things for that. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Travel Bug Girls podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get our new episodes every week. We'd love to connect with you on social media. Share your answer to this week's podcast question with us at facebook.com/travelbuggirls. You can find us on your favorite social media by using @travelbuggirls. Want to join our VIP group? You'll find us on Facebook groups under TBG Travel Bugs. Learn more about the Travel Bug Girls and what we do on our website at travelbuggirls.com. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and safe travels.